Hey, remember that time you were trying to convince yourself that a single external hard drive was enough for the whole family's movies, photos, and backup? I was there, scrolling through endless specs and glossy marketing copy, wondering if I was about to waste a good chunk of money on something that would just sit in a corner collecting dust. If you're on the fence about stepping up to a dedicated network-attached storage box, stick around. I am going to walk through the real-world experience of the Synology DiskStation DS418, what it actually brings to a home setup, and whether it's worth the investment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the DS418 is positioned as a home NAS. That means it's not trying to replace enterprise-grade storage, it's aimed at people who want a central place for media streaming, personal cloud, and basic backups. The box itself arrives sealed, with 4 empty 3.5-inch bays, a 2GB DDR4 memory module already soldered on, and a modest RTD1296 quad-core processor. The hardware is modest, but that's by design. You're not paying for raw horsepower you'll never need. What you do have to do yourself is buy the drives and pop them in, which is actually a plus because you can pick exactly the capacity and brand you trust. Let's talk about the setup experience, because that's where a lot of first-time NAS buyers stumble. The moment you open the box, you're greeted with a clean, matte chassis and a quick start guide that walks you through inserting the drives. I used 4 2TB Seagate Iron Wolf drives that I already had laying around, so I didn't need to buy new media. The process is straightforward: slide each drive into its bay, secure the screws, and power up the unit. The DS418 boots into Synology's DiskStation Manager, DSM, that runs on a tiny onboard web server. All you need is a browser on any device on the network, and the OS walks you through creating a storage pool, setting up RAID. The unit defaults to SHRA Synology-specific hybrid RAID that's forgiving if you later swap drives of different sizes, and creating shared folders. One of the biggest practical strengths of the DS418 is that SHR lets you start with a modest configuration and grow later without reformatting everything. Say you start with 2 2TB drives in a 2TB usable volume, and a few months later you add a third 4TB drive. The array will automatically redistribute data, giving you more space without you having to rebuild from scratch. For a family that's constantly adding photos from phones, kids' school projects, or new movies, that flexibility is a real time saver. Now, performance. With a 1.4 GHz quad-core CPU and 2 GB of RAM, the DS418 isn't built for heavy transcoding or intensive multi-user workloads. In my own house, 2 of us stream 1080p video from the NAS to a Roku and a smart TV at the same time, and the playback is buttery smooth. If you try to run a Plex server that needs to transcode 4K HDR on the fly, you'll notice the CPU buckling after a few streams. In that scenario, the unit will either refuse to transcode or will stutter, forcing you to either pre-transcode content or downgrade to a more powerful NAS. So, the DS418 is perfect for a small household that primarily consumes files ASIS, but it's not a media-heavy workstation for power users. Another thing that often trips people up is the network connectivity. The DS418 offers 2 1GBE ports, which can be aggregated for a slight boost in throughput if your router supports link aggregation. In practice, I didn't see a noticeable difference when using a single port because my home LAN is already limited to 1 gigabit per second. However, having the second port does give you redundancy. You can plug one cable into your bedroom switch and another into the living room router, and if one link drops you won't lose access entirely. For most home users, a single gigabit connection is more than enough, but that extra port adds a layer of reliability that you might appreciate if you're prone to network hiccups. Security and data protection are where the DS418 shines without you having to lift a finger. DSM includes a built-in firewall, automatic antivirus scanning for shared folders, and the ability to set up two-factor authentication for remote access. You can also schedule automatic snapshots of your data to an external USB drive or even to a cheap cloud service. The snapshots are incremental, so they don't chew up your storage like full backups would. In testing, I set up a nightly snapshot to a USB-C external HDD, and when I accidentally deleted an entire folder of vacation photos, the snapshot restored everything within minutes. That kind of safety net is a huge peace-of-mind factor if you're worried about accidental deletions or ransomware. On the flip side, there are a couple of practical weaknesses to keep in mind. First, the DS418 has no built-in SSD caching slot. Some higher-end Synology models let you add a small SSD to accelerate read/write speeds for frequently accessed files, but that's not an option here.